Hi, this is Bob Jordan, author of How They Did It, Billion Dollar Insights from the Heart of America. I am so thrilled today that you get to hear from Reese Schroeder. He is the Managing Director of Motorola Solutions Venture Capital Group. And what that means is you're going to be hearing from one of the best venture investors on the planet about exactly what kind of deals he wants to see, exactly the kind of entrepreneurs he wants to work with, how he wants entrepreneurs to pitch him, what kind of deals they've done, what they're looking at right now. This is going to be great. This is your entire MBA education for entrepreneurship as having to do with how to pitch Motorola to get funded from your company. Please listen to this entire video. It's terrific. Reese Schroeder, Managing Director, Motorola Solutions Venture Capital. Thank you so much for joining me.
Terrific to be here.
Thanks, really appreciate it. So I want to kind of dive right in with you, Reese. You have so much experience with entrepreneurs and with the process from inside a big corporation of how to support early stage technology companies, how to nurture them, what kind of efforts work, what kind don't. So maybe for starters, if we have an audience of entrepreneurs and they'd love to learn more, how is Motorola involved in early stage investing?
Sure. Well, Motorola, and this is before we changed our name to Motorola Solutions, Inc. earlier this year, but Motorola started the Corporate Venture Capital Program in 1999. And I think it came from a basic understanding that not all innovation is going to happen inside of the four walls of a corporation, that there is a ton of great innovation that's happening out elsewhere. And we started the venture capital group to basically give us an avenue and a pathway to all that innovation that's happening out there. And we have always built the program around the foundation that we're going to invest in companies that really fill a strategic gap for Motorola or Motorola Solutions. So we look for companies that are white spaces, adjacent businesses, not doing directly what we are doing internally.
If you don't mind me asking you in the middle, sorry for interrupting you, but when you say white space, what do you mean?
What I mean is a space that maybe directly we're not developing anything in right now, but it's certainly in the right ecosystem and certainly complementary to our business. So we look for those kind of companies as well.
So let's start kind of on a summary level. Motorola has been investing in outside companies since 1999. As you look at that entire span, how many companies have you invested in?
I think the total number is somewhere around 175 companies.
Wow. And how much money has gone into those companies?
Well, over the course of the years, and we typically don't give out a lot of financial information, but I think we've said before, over the life of the program, we've put out over $500 million.
Incredible. And that on its own makes Motorola a fairly major venture investor in the world.
Yeah, we've been recognized by some different organizations over the years as one of the most active investors out there, particularly in the wireless space.
And again, I don't know if you put out information on this, but what kind of track record? Can you talk a little bit about the home runs, about the base hits, strikeouts?
Well, sure. I mean, every venture capital program is going to run the gamut. I think if you look at the performance of our program over the years, we compare favorably to anybody, and I mean anybody, whether it's corporate or traditional financial venture capitalists. We've had a number of IPOs out of our portfolio, Entropic and Intelon, Sequans earlier this year. We've had some major acquisitions out of our portfolio. Danger by Microsoft, Avenue by Nokia, Navini by Cisco. I could rattle more off, but just giving you a feeling for that.
By the way, you're bringing up an important point, because just because Motorola invested didn't mean Motorola was the ultimate buyer of the company.
That's absolutely correct. In fact, out of the about 175 companies that we've invested in over the years, Motorola only acquired 4 of those.
Just 4?
Just 4. And it's because our thesis going in is not try before you buy. Our thesis going in is, as I said earlier, we're looking for companies that have a strategic fit. Now, it's not shocking that some of those companies would become so strategic over time that, it rose to the level of an acquisition, but it's not, as I said, the way we go into an investment.
So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you were also kind of going through more of those stats. So 4 companies only were acquired. You've had IPOs. Roughly, of all of those investments, what would you consider to be base hits? You had some modest success, not the greatest. And then what percentage would you say, you know what, we gave it a shot, it went bust anyway?
Well, this is a pretty dramatic number, but of the 175, and that's approximate, only 5 of them have been total losses.
That's it.
Which is an amazing statistic when
That is
I reflect
far
back
lower than any venture fund would say.
Now, that's not to say that we haven't had our shares of companies that didn't, perform as well, or we didn't get the kind of return on the investment that we would have liked. And that's going to happen in any portfolio. That's why it is a portfolio of investments. And but overall, and as I said, we don't give out our financials on the group, but over time, I'd say financial performance, we compare, very favorably to pretty much any, venture capital program out there. And in fact, I would say we've consistently been in the top quartile of performance.
Now, in a way, that doesn't matter, right? Because Motorola is the only investor in Motorola's fund, right?
Yeah, and basically, we invest off of the Motorola Solutions Inc. balance sheet, so we're not set up as a separate fund or a subsidiary. There are different structures for corporate venture capital, but we, like I say, are part of Motorola Solutions Inc.
And if you consider this as a category, Intel, Qualcomm, they have corporate venture funds as well.
Yes.
Would they be similar to what you do, or are there different flavors even inside of corporate VC?
I think just as there's different flavors in traditional financial VC, I think there's different flavors in corporate VC as well. I think there's each company has to figure out what exactly the right kind of program for it is, and tailor their program around that. And so you mentioned Intel and Qualcomm, both great corporate venture capital programs, but their thesis is probably a little different than ours. Each company is going to tailor their own their own corporate venture capital group to meet its needs.
In the world, how many corporate venture funds are there? Do you track that? Or?
Boy, I don't honestly know the answer, but it seems like it's an increasing area. There's a lot of them out there. Particularly in the wireless space, we run into a lot of different folks.
Do you tend to see that entrepreneurs approach you that they are thoughtful, that there is a specific reason they're approaching a corporate venture source for funding, or is it more the approach which is throw it against the wall and see if it sticks?
We certainly get both. I certainly prefer when the entrepreneur approaches us because he really or she really believes that Motorola Solutions is a great strategic fit for their company. And you can tell that very early in the discussion. One of the bits of advice I have for entrepreneurs who approach a corporate venture capital group: do a little background research on that group, understand their business, and when you come in, have some ideas about how you can strategically play with that company. That's going to be very impactful when you have that first discussion.
Do you worry about deal flow and what it looks like in your pipeline like a venture fund would?
Well, we're always managing our pipeline, and we have a very robust pipeline. We're on track this year, which is our first year as Motorola Solutions Venture Capital, to look at around 1,000 opportunities. And when I say 1,000 opportunities,
is that up or down from past years?
Well, that's definitely lower than when we were Motorola Ventures.
Because that was split.
Yeah, because we split the company, and I don't have visibility to the Motorola Mobility Ventures pipeline, but I'm guessing they have just as robust a pipeline as ever. But anyway, that's a lot of opportunities for a team of 5 people to go through. But we do it, and we try to sift down and find the ones that we really think are going to make an impact.
Do you have a goal in terms of how many investments you're trying to make every year?
Not really a goal, because I think that's the wrong way to look at it. Because I think really the goal is to make good quality investments, and if it's 2 or if it's 10, as long as they're high quality, that's really the goal. Having said that, when I look at the group, the size of the team, I would expect in a given year we're going to make somewhere in the area of 6 to 8 investments now as Motorola Solutions Venture Capital.
And we're obviously all big fans of innovation and entrepreneurship.
Absolutely.
Have you seen, in terms of how that deal flow goes and the quality of what you're seeing, is that affected by, for example, the recession, this deep recession which just occurred? Do you see entrepreneurs on a pace that really does not become affected by the macro environment, or is it affected?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the effects I do see is that traditionally our group has been an early stage investor. Series B investments have typically been our sweet spot. But what I see in the last year is there's not a lot of Series B and C deals compared to the ones that are either real early or real late. So I think that some of the macroeconomic conditions have created a little bit of a gap there. So we're seeing less of that middle stage deal right now. And I saw some data on the internet, and I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, but the data that some of the like Dow Jones Venture Source collect would sort of bear that out.
So if you could expand on that a little more for entrepreneurs who may not be sure what that means in terms of the stages investment between a seed and an A and a B and further rounds. Can you expand on those definitions?
So seed stage, that's really the first funding you take in. That's when you go to the angel investor community and get that very first capital. Series A is really, in my mind, and my definition, is when you go for your first institutional round with the venture capital community, be it traditional or corporate venture capital. And Series B, which I said was kind of our sweet spot historically, that's the second institutional round.
And you tend to be in the B round.
That has been the historical. That's been the historical place that we've been. However, in the last year and a half, we're doing more, like Series A kind of deals. And we've never had rules against it. I mean, we've invested across the whole spectrum. But right now, I'd say, that earlier stage kind of deal is where we're seeing more, more companies, and they're actually fairly mature Series A companies. And that's a good thing, because the reason we would focus on Series B was more about where the stage of the product or the technology development was. And so today, these Series A companies that we see oftentimes have technology that's developed in a similar fashion as what used to be Series B.
Further along.
So it works for us.
So this is your chance for the commercial for Motorola Solutions Venture Capital. What is the sweet spot? What are exactly the kind of early stage companies you would like to see, you would like those founders to approach you with?
Okay, if you think about Motorola Solutions, Inc., we are basically 2 big businesses today. One is the enterprise business, and the biggest single vertical in the enterprise business is retail. But we're looking at next generation retail opportunities, hospitality, supply chain, manufacturing, so mobile workforce, things like that. Lots of interesting technologies that are going to be, the kind of technologies that are going to be in retail establishments, in 3 to 5 years from now. Those are the kind of things we look at for that side of the business. On the government and public safety part of the business, which is traditional public safety communications business for Motorola, goes way back. We're looking for next generation technologies in that area. technologies that are going to be applicable as we move towards public safety, LTE, next generation integrated command and control, next generation 911. Things like that are going to be very interesting to us. And then lastly, we recently announced the establishment of an advanced services business. And so we're also looking at interesting services that we can add to the portfolio of solutions that we sell.
So if you can tell us about some of the recent investments that you've made, what companies have you excited that are really starting to charge out there?
We've invested in some great companies in the past year. One here in Chicago that I'm very excited about is CleverSafe, which is a
Chris Gladwin.
Chris Gladwin, a secure cloud storage company. Very, very compelling technology that they have. We also invested in Vivotech, which is a company that does point of sale devices that have NFC embedded in them. They also have a mobile wallet solution.
What's NFC?
I'm sorry, near field communications. Wave in front of the device and wave and pay.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
And then Nearby Systems, which is a company out of Silicon Valley that does micro locationing indoors, like in a store environment. So to identify very, very close proximity where a person is inside the store. And that opens up a whole, set of solutions you can offer. And then recently...
You mean the person's passing by the ketchup aisle and text message, ketchup, Heinz is on sale?
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then the last one that we announced, the most recent one, is a company called Canvas, which does kind of an enterprise app store. They take all these paper forms that are out there that businesses use all the time, and they digitize them, and you can now get them in an app store format. So those are some of the most recent ones. We've got a couple of more that I think we'll be announcing before the end of the year. In fact, as many as 4, but I'm very confident on 2.
It sounds like you're having a lot of fun.
This is a great job. It allows you to be in a big company, and it allows you to still really participate in the entrepreneurial environment, and that's what's great about it. And one of the things I do want to say to the entrepreneurs out there that I think is really good, if you do have a business that fits Motorola solutions, there's probably no one out there that works harder for our portfolio companies, to make them successful with our business. When we invest in a company, we really view ourselves as the business development arm for that company, and we try to make sure that they get exposed to every possible opportunity that our business is involved in, that they could also be involved in. And at the end of the day, that's where we do the majority of our work. It's not actually doing the transactions, it's making these companies successful.
I think you're raising an important point. It's not just about the money, it's about being that ambassador for the early stage company to really make sure they succeed.
Absolutely, and I've said this many times. I take as much joy out of seeing one of our companies sign a contract with Motorola Solutions as I do from seeing them IPO. I mean, it's really, for us, it's about both. It's about building that strategic relationship, and later on, all that goes well, then you get the financial returns they follow.
So let's now say you have these entrepreneurs that you get to talk to, and it's before they get in the door. How do you want them to pitch you, to pitch Motorola? What are the aspects, the kind of best practices that you want to see coming in the door? Okay.
And I love giving these tips. And in fact, every year I do kind of a mentoring session for entrepreneurs. I do one in New York and one in Chicago. And I'll tell you my secret formulas that I'm always sharing. 1, on the first slide, succinctly say what it is you do. Don't start talking about there's a problem, it's a really big problem, here's all the aspects of it. Start by letting us know what you do. Secondly, and I think this is really, really important, when you approach a strategic investor, corporate venture capital group, do a little research on that company so you understand what their business is. Come into that meeting with some ideas on how your technology, how your solution could be important to that company. That, that kind of preparation is always so important. And, I would say those are the two biggest pieces of advice. And if you do those two things, probably the rest will follow. The rest of, of your pitch, the rest of your presentation will probably work.
The flip side of that, and I can kind of guess a little of this, but what are the biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs make walking in the door, or even before they get in the door with you?
Also a great question. For me, one of the things that I don't like is when we do take a meeting and we have our first meeting with an entrepreneur, they they spend the first half hour asking me all the questions, which I don't mind. I'll answer. I mean, I really, I try to, I try to be open and honest with all the entrepreneurs we talk to, but it's really, at that point in time, I think the onus is more on them to make sure they use the time wisely to get across the message of what their company is all about. And like I said, how their company could be strategic to Motorola Solutions. So I'd say that's a big mistake. Another big mistake is to shoot me a slide deck or a Word document that has another company's name on it, presentation for company X.
That's a bad mistake.
That's a bad mistake. It happens more than you might think. And to me, that's just, that's kind of a, it's kind of a red flag. When
Absolutely. It shows that there's not a lot of attention to detail.
Yeah.
And if at the outset that's what things look like, what's it going to look like down the road?
Yeah, and the other thing is, I really value when an entrepreneur comes in and they have an idea of how their solution is important to our business, rather than trying to get me to tell them how
Right.
it's important, because I don't know enough about their solution to really be able to answer that yet.
Right. They should be thoughtful and do the work. Is there a profile to that person who shows up? And I mean particular for Motorola Solutions. Does that founder tend to be more an engineer from that side of the business? Does it not matter? Do they have to have more marketing savvy, or is this completely the talents of the team? And
I don't honestly think it matters. I mean, we've invested in those 175 companies. I mean, men and women, CEOs and other members of the team across pretty much all the demographics, across all the sort of backgrounds from business to technical. And
let me ask you this: who was the youngest person? How old? And the oldest person? Does entrepreneurship fit into a demographic that way?
Boy, I don't know exact ages, but I mean, I think we've probably invested in, on the young side, probably companies that are led by people in their mid to late 20s. And on the outside, I have a person in mind. I won't say his name, but probably around 60. Started a company.
Give
down
hope
in
to the
Texas,
60-year-olds.
and was a very, very bright and very current thinker. So runs the gamut.
I just had a picture. This is not a business Motorola would ever get into, but there's these stories that just came out about chat roulette, and the kid who did that, he was in Russia at the time. He didn't want to tell anyone. I think he was 17. He had millions of people online. I think that his site is faded from view here.
Well, that's one of the things that we do look at over the years is, sort of what's the social consequence of the companies that we're looking at. And there's definitely been companies we've passed on over the years because we thought that there was some sort of negative, social consequence that could be associated with it.
Do you pay attention to the current emphasis on social networking and the social graph? How you hear about a lot of venture funds where this is just front and center for them. You didn't say that for Motorola Solutions.
Yeah, you can't help but not pay attention to it because the social networks are moving into all aspects, of business. So it is, we are not, if you look at our businesses, we're not in a position where we're probably going to go invest in a social networking company. But having said that, social networking is having an impact in our businesses, in public safety arena, in the retail arena. Many of you that are watching this, probably used your cell phone to, talk about an incident that just happened, or a product you just bought that you were unhappy with, or something at an establishment you went to, and you got to recognize that, and our customers recognize that. So social networks are everywhere. The other thing you didn't hear me say, but we're acutely aware of, is the cloud. It's pretty hard to get a venture pitch today and not have that word, come up at least once. And we're, very acutely aware of that, and we're investing and looking at businesses that fit in that space as well.
Recently I was reading that the rate of new business formation over the past couple of years had actually gone down. My impression is that every time a recession hits, it actually goes up, because you have more people who are out of work and therefore thinking, what the heck, they'll give it a try. But it seems that stat, it's not been as strong the past couple of years. What is your feeling on all of this? Do you think in general, Americans are as innovative, or more so in the rest of the world, or what's the state of innovation today?
I'm always optimistic and I'm always positive about it. I mean, and you can't help but be when you have a job like mine, where every day I'm getting business plans and emails and phone calls from people who have great ideas. So, from my standpoint, I think innovation is alive and well. It's here, in the United States for sure, but it's all over. It's everywhere in the world. There's great companies being formed every day. And right now, post-separation of Motorola Solutions Venture Capital, we're only going to be investing in companies based here in the U.S. because our team is based in the U.S. As I said earlier, we have a very active model of working with our portfolio companies, and we can't do the kind of job we want to do if we're not if we're not in the same region as the company. But, that's today. Who knows what the future holds in that regard. But even though the companies are based here, many of our companies are, working with companies outside the U.S. and they're building their businesses. So, the innovation is global for sure.
Well, Reese, I think from what you've said, you're clearly an inspiration for entrepreneurs, and there's a great cause for hope here for seeing a lot of new and great companies come out, and hopefully that Motorola is part of a lot of those successes.
We want to be part of it, and I encourage everybody watching that has a company or knows of a company that is potentially relevant to our business. Please give me a call, send me an email. We want to hear from you.
Reese Schroeder, thank you so much. We really appreciate your spending the time. This has been an outstanding education for entrepreneurs.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you.